Welcome to Real Life Beyond Faith, where a formerly Christian, currently atheist couple takes a deep dive into the experience of life after deconversion. This is episode 15. I'm your host, Jenica Crail.
And I'm your host, Patrick Crail.
So today we're going to talk about sex and religion.
Woo.
And what religion teaches you about sex and how that can affect your life and your sex life, especially. Who knew? But first, we're going to talk a little bit about a post I made on Facebook today, which was talking about harassment that especially women receive online. Mm-hmm. I basically went into my ignored messages inbox where I, put all of the people who repeatedly message me like, hi, hey, hello, baby, hello, honey.
Like pictures all these, of flowers.
Yeah, pictures of flowers. All these like random strangers on Facebook who just message me out of the blue and repeatedly message me even after I've ignored their messages. I put some of them into the ignored messages inbox so that I can kind of collect assholes and then take screenshots of them repeatedly like trying to video chat me, sending me messages like every day.
Hi.
Yeah, like literally people.
Sweet goddess.
Yes, yeah. Like literally some of these people will just message me over and over and over again without any response. I don't understand it. But I collect them in my asshole inbox. And today I went in there and took screenshots of a bunch of them. And I put them on Facebook and I said something along the lines of, this is the type of harassment I get all the time. If you are someone who is doing this to women, please stop. Mm-hmm. I had a feeling that this would hit a chord with a lot of other women on Facebook because I imagine I'm not the only one getting these types of harassments and messages.
Yeah, and it blew up.
It immediately blew up with people reacting, for one, like men reacting with surprise or anger, and women reacting with, yeah, I get the same thing too, and sharing their screenshots of assholes who have been harassing them.
Some of them are ridiculous.
Yeah. One of my friends, Emily, like Facebook friends, she was sharing some screenshots and like these guys were weird and creepy. Like one dude was like offering to lick her armpits and stuff.
Ew.
Really freaking weird.
And then there was another one where a different woman responded to a rude comment and he says something about, I hope you get raped and
I hope you kill yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, okay, that's an appropriate response.
Yeah. So because this woman that you told has a nice ass out of the blue without any provocation, you just message her and say, hey, nice ass. And she doesn't like that. You're so entitled as a man in this society that you think that now she deserves to kill herself because she didn't appreciate that rude comment from you. Man, what?
How fragile is your ego?
Seriously.
That you gotta say, oh, I hope you kill yourself because you didn't my comment about your ass. I like your ass. And something to that effect.
And it was unsolicited.
You gotta say, I hope you kill yourself.
Yeah,
that's cool.
I like it when you tell me I have a nice ass. That's solicited. Yeah. I want you to tell me that you like my ass. But some random stranger online objectifying you, like it's not okay. It's uncomfortable. It's creepy. And especially if the woman tells you they don't like it, that's not a reason to tell them they should kill themselves or tell them that you hope they get raped or something.
Yeah. So speaking of creepy, I just looked at my mic and there's a stink bug on my mic.
There's a stink bug on your mic?
Yeah. It's on the other side.
Ermagerd. I think I heard that stink bug earlier and I couldn't find it.
Hey, stink bug.
Oh my God. There is a stink bug on your mic.
All right. So we have a special guest tonight.
Yes, we have a guest tonight.
His name is Stink Bug.
And we can't smush him because he'll smell really bad. Stinky the stink bug.
Yeah.
Well, he can stay. I was wondering what you were making a face about.
I looked down and there was a bug right in my face. I'm like, oh, hello.
So what we're trying to say is, do not send women random messages saying, hi, hey, hello.
How you doing?
Nice ass. If you're going to message somebody online, please have something of substance to say. Don't just irritate them with a hello or hi message. We get those so often and they are so annoying. Just take a minute to imagine this. You're sitting there playing with your children, minding your own business in your own home. Your phone buzzes. You see the blinking light that indicates that you have a message. You assume it's a friend, your husband, your wife, someone important to you. You open your phone to receive this message, this possibly important message, while you're enjoying your family time. And it's just a message from an absolute stranger that says, hi. Do you realize how annoying that is?
Yeah. And
this happens constantly to me. Or if it's not the hi, it's waving. So-and-so is waving at you. What does that even mean? How am I supposed to respond to that?
That's even less of an effort.
Back? Yeah.
That's even less of an effort than just saying hi. Instead of typing 2 letters, hi, you just click a button that waves.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like, no, I don't appreciate this.
Because I'm pretty sure that's going to get you no response, like right off the bat.
I can't imagine that people respond to that. I mean, maybe there are people who respond to it. I'm not one of them. Because to me, it's just like, okay, you're waving at me. So I just had to open my phone.
Dismiss this message just to clear the notification.
Yeah. Just to see that some jackass decides that he's going to wave at me randomly. And then there are some people who will do that consecutively for 10 days in a row. And thankfully, I usually hit the ignore messages button right away. So I don't see them until I go into my asshole inbox and I look and I'm just like, really? Why would someone keep doing it every single day if I'm not responding? I don't get it.
So basically,
just don't do that.
Men, you are not entitled to have a woman's attention.
Yeah.
If you're trying to make a conversation, put some effort into it or something. And stop just spamming women with messages saying hi.
Yeah. And I'm not mean. If somebody, a stranger, messages me and asks me a question, more than just how are you, but asks me a question or says something of substance to me, I will respond. I have made a ton of friends online. And a lot of them are just people who we randomly just messaged each other. Oh my God, Patrick is being attacked by a stink bug.
Stinky, get off of me. Don't squish him, don't squish him.
I'm not squishing him.
Stinky. I could see him winding up to fly at me too. And he attacked. Stinky was rude, so we kicked him out. He was a rude guest.
That's it. We're not having a guest tonight.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we pretty much covered that.
Yeah. So cut it out. Stop being creepy and lazy and entitled.
Yeah, which I would be surprised if any of our listeners are any of those things. But just spread the word.
Generally speaking.
If you're a woman and you're receiving messages like that, blast that crap on Facebook. Just put screenshots out there. Tell your friends, hey, this person is harassing me.
I mean, you can report them to Facebook,
they need
right?
some messages harassing them back. I don't know. I'm not really sure the best way to combat the situation, but what do you think?
Can you report the messages to Facebook?
I think. I don't know if Facebook would would take them off just for saying hi, you know? I haven't tried that. You know, they're not really threatening anybody. They're just being annoying. Like, I don't think they take people off of Facebook just for being annoying. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. If I'm wrong about that, just message me and let me know. Or email us, reallifebeyondfaith@gmail.com. All right, so tonight we're talking about sex and religion.
And apparently everyone else is this week, too.
Yeah, we found out that No Religion Required actually has the same topic for this week.
And we did not talk to each other about it.
Yeah.
Just kind of random.
Oh, speaking of No Religion Required, we were guests on their show last week. Mm-hmm. So if you want to hear that interview, just go to, I think they're on Stitcher, Spreaker, iTunes.
They're on Google Play.
Anywhere that you can find podcasts. It's just No Religion Required. And yeah, we were guests on their show. And it was a lot of fun. We love Bobby and Ashley. They're pretty great.
Yeah, they're awesome.
We were also on Inciting Incident podcast this past week. So
for real this time.
Yeah. Yeah, this time it wasn't.
If anyone has missed out, we interviewed her for our podcast, but when we did that, we both thought that we were interviewing each other for our podcast. Well, we interviewed her first, and then she interviewed us, and we were on her podcast last week.
Yeah, we kind of explained that at the beginning of last week's episode. The confusion.
But not everyone listens. Said, if you missed it, if you missed out.
Yeah. All right. Before we get into the meat of this episode, let's hear from a couple of our friends' podcasts.
Hey, all you listeners, I'm Robert.
And I'm Amy from Secular Yacking.
And we just wanted to let you know that if you've got 30 minutes to kill,
then we're the podcast for you. We're just some old married couple who's been yakking at each other over the many years.
And we thought we should start making it so you can listen in on our yakking.
We dig past the mainstream and bring you the news that you may or may not have heard about.
We take a look at politics, religion, science, and pretty much anything we feel like yakking about and sharing it with you. And let us not forget our weekly Mr. Potter Award.
No, we're not professionals on anything we talk about, but we love to yak about stuff and give you our opinion on the matter.
So tune in at secularyacking.com or check out our feed on iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and anywhere good podcasts can be heard.
And who knows what craziness will happen.
Yeah, just like this.
Have y'all ever wondered what it's like to be a redneck with empathy? Have you never heard of a Southerner who isn't a blathering bigot? Well, have I got the show for you. It's the Podunk Polymath Podcast, hosted by myself, Chris, and it's the sentiments of a secular, sarcastic, screwed-up Southern SJW and skeptic. You can find me and the show on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, or your favorite podcatcher. Y'all stop on by and take it easy now, okay?
And we're back. That was really good that time.
That was really good.
I think we're just going to get better and better at this.
Probably. As we should.
Oh, man. We're supposed to talk about serious stuff. Yeah. I'm all like giggly.
We can make it fun.
We can try.
So what we want to talk about tonight is how religion has affected sex in our sex life. And we got some feedback from some people from Facebook tonight. So we will pull some comments from there, but we'll start with our own
experience.
Yep.
Yeah. This is a kind of tough topic for me. And so I'm kind of struggling to find the words for it because, I mean, my sexual shame and guilt from my past caused by what religion taught me sexuality is supposed to be nearly ended my life. So it's really difficult and kind of nerve-wracking to dive into the subject. So I think I'm overcompensating for my nervousness by being a little bit like giggly and giddy tonight. Because I don't know, I'm hesitant to travel down that road. I know that it's necessary, and I know that we've promised this episode, and I want to do it. It's not like I don't want to do it. I don't know. It's a really tough topic for me, and I want to do it right, and I want the full impact to be apparent about what religion's teachings about sexuality can really do in a life for real. Like, not just ideologically being unsound, but the real effects that it can have in somebody's life and how it can possibly be a life or death issue. And it can ruin people's lives, and very nearly ruined mine. So yeah, that's why I'm having a little bit of trouble getting started here. I just don't even know where to start. I mean, I guess I'll start with my early teens and what I was taught about sexuality. Then we'll talk about what you were taught about sexuality and kind of go from there. All right. So I was raised in an evangelical Christian home, and my mom actually sat me down when I was, I think, 11 or 12 to have the talk with me and tell me, you know, what sex was, how you do it, the ins and outs of, you know, what the expectations are, in what circumstances it's okay, whereas not okay. All of that was based in the framework of Christianity's understanding of what sexuality was. So the physical stuff, yeah, she told me about how all of that works. But it was framed in the Christian understanding of sexuality, which is it's only okay when it's between a man and a woman in the context of marriage, and that it's God's gift to us, that it's pleasurable. Thankfully, I got that message. I had some friends that I went to church with who got the message from their moms that sex is not pleasant for women, that it hurts and that it'll hurt every time for the rest of your life, but it's something that you owe your husband, and so you have to do it.
Right. And the unfortunate thing is they are passing on their personal experience, like that they have had a bad experience with it and that it's not enjoyable and that it's painful. So they, first of all, don't have a good experience to begin with, and then they pass on that expectation to their daughter.
Yeah, so then their daughter goes into their marriage with this fear and apprehension about sex. And you know what fear causes? Adrenaline. And you know what adrenaline causes? For your sexual organs to tense up, tighten up, and not be receptive to
right.
sexual advances.
Relaxed.
Yeah. So then it just ends up being a self-fulfilling prophecy of, yeah, it hurts when you have adrenaline going because of fear and you're all tensed up. So it's really disturbing that that's what people are teaching their young daughters about sexuality and about their sexual bodies. Thankfully, my mom taught me that it was a beautiful thing, that it was fun, that it was pleasurable, that it was supposed to feel good. But of course, she taught me that it was between a man and a woman in the context of marriage. And she taught me that sex outside of marriage was a terrible thing and that I should absolutely save myself for marriage. I walked away from that conversation thinking that sex was amazing. Like having everything click in my mind and realizing, holy crap, well, that makes sense that a boy has a penis and a girl has a vagina. Now I understand why we're made that way. Like
the pieces fit.
It's like an outlet fitting together. It's perfect. And I thought it was really cool. And I thought it was especially cool that it feels good. And for me, I was looking forward to someday getting married and getting to do that. Mm-hmm. So I think my mom did a really great job, despite, the Christian doctrine behind all of it, of telling me what sex was and that it's something that is like a beautiful thing. I really appreciate that. How did you learn about sex, Patrick?
I actually learned mostly about sex at school. We had sex ed. We had like 1 or 2 weeks of sex ed during health class.
What grade was that?
I think it was 8th grade, maybe 7th grade.
Okay.
Right around when I was 12 or 13. But I remember pretty well. It was pretty soon after we did the sex ed week. I went to the store with my dad, and as we were driving there, he, started to do the talk. And I kind of feel bad about it because I was kind of dismissive about it. Mm. And he started talking about it, and I was like, yeah, I know. And it was partly because I had already learned about it in school, and like, it wasn't just learning about it from the teachers, but also our friends talking about it.
Yeah.
But it was partly that and partly feeling awkward about having that conversation. But yeah, we didn't really talk too much about it because I said I already know how it works and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, at that point, I had a basic understanding of it, but there was still more to learn.
Yeah. In retrospect, as adults now, we can look back on that and be like, oh man, it took so much courage for him to bring it up in the first place.
Right.
And then you were
That's
just
why
like,
I feel bad about it. Because, I mean, that's a special moment that you have with your kid. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, and the fact that he even attempted to have that moment with you, a lot of parents just don't even try to talk. Yeah. They're like, the school can handle that. I'm not talking about that stuff.
I mean, I was lucky to begin with that our school even taught sex ed.
Right. Now, did they teach abstinence only, or did they? It was more comprehensive?
Yeah, it was more comprehensive.
Oh, wow.
They taught about condoms. I remember distinctly that they taught about diaphragms as a form of birth control because it was like a rubber disc. It was more than a disc. I can't think of how to explain it now, but
it was a diaphragm.
It was a diaphragm. They had a hole punched out in it so that students couldn't steal it and use it. I distinctly remember that.
That's funny.
We were like passing it around the class and stuff, and same with condoms.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they even maybe demonstrated like putting a condom on a banana.
Yeah.
Or something like that, But yeah, I mean, I was lucky to get that education.
Yeah.
Not all schools teach that kind of comprehensive sex ed.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure that there were ways that they could have gone further with sex education, even in that school, in that context. I was homeschooled, so I wasn't in school in 7th and 8th grade. I didn't go to a public school until 9th grade, and then I did 9th through 12th grade at a public high school. And we did sex education in our health class. I don't remember it super well, except for there was a lot of talk about STDs and pictures and all this gross stuff. I think I kind of zoned out because I was like, well, I'm not having sex before marriage anyway, so I don't really need to pay attention to this.
Yeah. I remember we even watched a video of a childbirth.
Yeah, we watched a video of a childbirth in one... What class was that? Because I don't think it was my health class, unless it was like a later health class. Because we had health class in, I think, sophomore year.
Yeah, we had it 2 years.
I can't remember.
And I remember both years we had like a week or two of sex ed.
Maybe it was my Health 2 class where we watched the childbirth. I cried. I cry every time I see a childbirth. I'm a softie. It's just so beautiful. Like it's nasty, but it's also kind of beautiful. Like the baby emerges, the woman is victorious in giving birth to this human being. It's such an emotional thing. Like even before I ever had a child of my own, like I just thought it was just the most emotional, beautiful thing that you could possibly do.
I mean, it's a good thing to show teenagers so that they know like how things actually work, but it's also at the same time like they're teenagers, young teens watching us, and we were so immature.
Yeah. For some people, I'm sure they were traumatized.
Yeah.
Not me. I'm a total softie when it comes to that stuff. I was like, oh my God. Like tears streaming down my face. They're like, oh, the weird homeschool girl. Oh, man. So that's what we learned in school. But then moving on to what we learned in church is kind of a different story. For me, it was obviously abstinence only, purity culture. It was just understood that sex outside of marriage is just the absolute worst thing, that you are defiling your body, especially for women. Like this was your gift that you were going to give to your husband, like a pure and spotless gift on your marriage night or your wedding night to the man that God has chosen for you. And so I took it extremely seriously that I was going to keep my virginity and offer that to my husband as a love gift on our wedding night. And I read the book I Kissed Dating Goodbye by Josh Harris, where he took it a step further and said that you shouldn't date anybody. You should court only who God tells you is a possible marriage mate.
Right. Someone who is definitely a serious contender for life
marriage.
Partner.
Yeah. He said like, just dating a bunch of people and putting your heart out there over and over again, it just ruins you. Like, even if you don't have sex with those people, like you're giving bits of your heart to each of these people. And by the time that you have found the one that God wants you to marry, you have nothing left of your heart to give because you've already given it away.
Turns out that's not how it works.
Yeah, it turns out. And it turns out he was 21 years old when he wrote this freaking book. And it was paraded around in evangelical Christian circles like it was just like God-breathed scripture. And I don't understand this. Like, grown men and women were pushing this on young adults, teens and adults, as being like the way to live your life, the way to express your sexuality and to meet your future spouse. These people should have known better,
Oh, they knew better. They just wanted to control the younger population.
I don't know. Well, then I think of my parents, though, like, and they bought into it, too. So maybe it was just like we were so deep into the ideology that we couldn't see through the bullshit that it was.
Yeah,
and like my parents, they pretty much courted. Like within 2 weeks of knowing each other, they were planning on getting married. So for them, maybe they were just thinking, well, yeah, like that's just how it's supposed to work. Because they didn't have like a whole lot of like positive experiences outside of that.
Yeah, that's true.
So I guess that makes sense. But it's still just like, what? Like how does this make sense? So I read that. I took that entirely to heart. I decided I wasn't going to date anybody in high school. And when I did date somebody, after high school, it was only going to be someone who I believed that God had chosen for me to get married to. how do you even figure that out without dating?
Right.
Like, that was the tricky part for me. I'm like, well, how do I find this person? Like, I kind of have to just wait until God gives me a sign that it's the right person. So I thought I found that person when I was 15, actually. I met somebody in my youth group that I was very attracted to and eventually fell in love with. We started talking and hanging out a little bit in groups because you don't hang out by yourselves.
Nope.
And I would see him at youth group and we were always flirting and stuff. And it was really exciting because it was like the first time that someone who I was actually very much attracted to and into was also attracted to me and into me, and just like the butterflies and the excitement of that like first crush, you know, like a first like mutual crush. And so we actually talked for I think 2 years before we finally started dating, because we didn't believe we should be dating before we were like ready to like really be serious about stuff. And we were both in high school.
And he grew up with the same background?
Yeah.
Same kind of teaching about purity?
Yes. Yeah. And he was actually going to a very charismatic, like artistic,
Fruits of the Spirit type church?
yes. Yeah. Like they were very into the arts. They were very into speaking in tongues. Like I was a worship dancer at that church. I had started going to that church, and that's how I met him, through the youth group. It was one of the old churches that my parents and I had gone to when I was like pretty young, and we went back there to see like if that was a good fit for us when we were looking for a new church at one point. And so, yeah, it was kind of you could call it a wacky church. But I really liked it there because it was very expressive, you know, like everyone was very into expressing themselves physically and emotionally and stuff. And it was a good fit for me because I'm a very passionate person. Well, that's the context in which I met this guy. And so, yeah, we were all like very, very serious and very on fire for Jesus and all this stuff. And so, you know, he and I had decided that we would be patient and wait on God's timing. And, you know, we were planning on getting married, but we were just like waiting it out. And my God, the sexual tension was unbearable. I mean, we were 15, 16, 17 years old. And we were flirting like crazy. Mm-hmm. We would only allow ourselves to be, you know, together when we were in a group, because we knew like being alone was probably not a good plan if we were trying to stay pure and all that. And there's like all kinds of stories I could tell about being in a youth group where purity was like of utmost importance, and people knew that me and this guy were in love. And so they were like telling stories about us behind our backs that weren't even true. Like, I don't even know if I've told you about this stuff. Like, telling stories about how like we were holding hands at this birthday party, which we weren't. But we had to like,
horror.
I know, right? We had to like defend ourselves. Like, we weren't even holding hands. We were being completely pure and good and just walking around together. Like, why are you guys making a big deal? There were all kinds of rumors going around about us holding hands and being alone and walking off into the woods, which none of that stuff we actually even did. It was so weird, like such a like Twilight Zone type of world that these people live in, where holding hands is like this huge scandal. So we were talking and courting in that atmosphere. And then we finally decided that it was okay for us to start dating in my senior year of high school. And once we opened that door, I feel like things kind of started escalating. I mean, by this point, like neither of us thought masturbation was okay. So we had that kind of tension going on in our bodies. And then we were both like very physically attracted to each other. So we had that kind of like chemistry and tension going on between us. Once we opened that door of sexual intimacy in any form whatsoever, like touching, petting, that kind of thing, the floodgates opened. and it got very physical very fast. And we started exploring each other, exploring our own bodies. He bought me my first vibrator ever.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I didn't even know how to use it. Like, I was trying to figure out how to use the darn thing. Well, once I figured it out, I was like, this is the best thing in the world. But in the course of my, young adult life, I don't even know how many vibrators I threw away and bought a new one months later because I couldn't stand it anymore. And then I would throw that away because of shame. Mm-hmm. Like, I went through so many
guilt and shame cycle.
Yeah, like I would buy one because I needed it so bad. And then I would feel so guilty about using it. So I would like put on my trench coat with the vibrator in my pocket and walk down the street to the garbage can at the end of the street and throw it away so I couldn't even retrieve it. It was so stupid. And all this over something that's just completely natural. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to move this story along because there's so much there, but I'm not going to get into all of it. Me and this guy, we started having sex, and I just spiraled out of control. Like, to me, once my virginity was gone, it was pointless to even try to be good.
Yeah.
Like, I just put this label on myself of, you are a terrible person. You're no longer a beautiful daughter of God. You are trash. You've ruined yourself. You have nothing to offer to your future husband. You're trash.
So you've already gone too far that there's no redemption. So
yeah, like there's no getting virginity back. So what's the point? You might as well live it up, right?
Yeah.
So that was kind of my mindset. Like, well, I'm just turning my conscience off and I'm doing whatever I want because it's over anyway. I ruined it. So like, he tried to tell me like that we should stop doing this and we needed to like pull back and slow down and not have sex anymore. And I told him, I was like, why? What's the point? We've already taken that step. What? So now we're just going to torture ourselves? And I was like, I was mad. I was frustrated. And at first he's like, well, no, we really need to try to be good. And I was like, no, I'm a bad girl now.
It's too late.
Like, that was literally what I told him. I was like, I am bad now. There's no going back for me. So what's the point in even trying now? And it was a tough time for me. And I turned off my conscience and I just did whatever I wanted. And I started falling for another guy. I enjoyed the attention that I got from that. I fell in love with him and I started cheating on my current boyfriend with somebody else, having sex with him. And I was in love with both of them at the same time, which that was the first time I ever realized that was actually possible. And long story short, I ended up telling my boyfriend what was going on and everything fell apart in my life. Like, I had been calling his parents mom and dad, because we were planning on getting married. We had our life planned out. He had a ring bought for me, which I didn't know at the time. And everything just fell apart all in one day. And that's when I was suicidal, or when I started to get suicidal, because I already just felt like I had nothing left. Like, I wasn't the woman that I thought I should be or wanted to be or anything. So I was just kind of like living it up until finally everything came crashing down on me. And then once it did, I was like, well, I'm done.
Might as well enjoy
I got my thrills in. So now I'm just going to drive off of a bridge. And that was the plan. I was going to drive off of the bridge on 77. Thankfully, that never happened. But, I mean, I was suicidal and with a plan.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this because I had consensual sex with my boyfriend at 18, 19 years old. What the hell?
But religion taught you that it was the end of the world, that you were worthless afterwards, and that you had messed up so bad that it was irredeemable.
And that I didn't own my own body. I wasn't the one to give consent for someone to touch my body. My body belonged to God and it belonged to my dad. You know? That's why a young man asks permission to a girl's dad to marry, because he owns her. Yeah. You know, people see that as being like this like beautiful, honorable thing. It's like, no, that's gross. Like, I don't need my dad's permission to do something with my body. And that's just like this old mindset that's been passed on from generation to generation that we just take as being the way things are. It's messed up. It's messed up along with all of the other ideologies that surround sexuality and a woman's body. So thankfully, I got things back together, decided to rededicate my life to God and to try to earn my virginity back, which is kind of weird.
Your spiritual virginity.
My spiritual virginity.
Your physical virginity would never.
Yeah. I mean,
be able to
and that idea of earning back my spiritual virginity really saved my life. So, I mean, it played its part, but if those ideas weren't there in the first place, then there would be nothing for me to be suicidal over in the first place. You know, there would be no guilt and shame. I could have had a beautiful experience with my first boyfriend, who I loved dearly and who loved me. We explored our bodies together. We had that special bond of being the first people to explore each other with, you know? And that was all ruined because we slipped up and his penis went in my vagina. Like, big deal.
Ruined by certain standards put onto you.
Right. So, yeah, that was the most negative thing that my religious upbringing did as far as my sexuality. It also made things difficult once I met you. And, you know, the sexual tension between us was holy shit levels of sexual tension. So, yeah, that's another story. But what about you, like during your teenage years and the relationships you had and stuff?
I never had that level of guilt and shame. I mean, we had the whole purity culture thing. When I was like 13, our youth group did the whole silver ring thing, which was your promise to God that you were going to remain a virgin until you get married. And I went into it thinking, oh, this is silly. You know, I'm a preteen, you know, going through puberty. And they planned that at that time for kids that age to go to this thing. And, I go into it and I'm thinking, there's no way. Like, I'm 13 years old.
Well, what were you thinking though? Like, you didn't want to save yourself, or you were thinking like it's ridiculous for them to be talking to you about sex when you're only 13 years old?
No, I was thinking like, I don't want to do this. That's a big commitment.
Like, you didn't want to have to wait?
Yeah.
Okay.
But, I mean, plus too, like, going into it with my friends, same kind of mindset. So we could just kind of, like, play it off of each other. But, yeah, going into it, I'm like, yeah, there's no way. But then, you know, after talking about it that night and then repeatedly, like, throughout youth group, it kind of, like, wore me down and got me to the point where I was, like, all on board.
Yeah.
So, and I got the ring and I wore it sometimes. I mostly didn't wear it because I didn't like wearing rings.
So what was it that finally broke you down and made you on board with things? Do you remember?
I don't think it was any one specific thing. I think it was just the constant talking about the whole purity culture thing.
Like how important it was?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, to be clear, within Christianity, they don't call it purity culture. That's a outside of Christianity term. They just consider it to be biblical relationships and biblical marriage.
Right.
And they do refer to it as purity. I had a purity ring, actually. I was wearing my purity ring when I lost my virginity.
I bet that made you feel real guilty afterwards.
Oh, yeah. Really great. Actually, it's crazy how I did lose my virginity. It was literally a slip up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, literally a slip. Like, messing around, pants down. And it just accidentally slipped in.
Yeah.
Do you know how horrible of a way that is to, like, have your first time front seat of a car, an accident? And that led me down a path of almost killing myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know how ridiculous that is? It's insane.
That's a big burden.
Yeah.
To put on.
For a young person who's just experiencing their sexuality for the first time. A completely natural thing that all mammals experience. And humans especially.
Puberty. All those hormones.
Yeah. Hormones. Love. I genuinely loved this person.
Mm-hmm.
And then to have that one moment ruin the next few years of my life.
Yeah.
I mean, not just the next few years. That had a negative impact on my life, even into our marriage. Because I felt like my body was defiled.
Right.
And that I didn't have, like, my whole self to offer you in our marriage. And it wasn't until I let go of religion and let go of those ideas about sexuality and what it meant within a marriage that I was able to fully let go of the guilt and shame that I felt. So fucked up.
Yeah, I luckily didn't have that level of damage.
Yeah.
But it's kind of expected with me being a guy versus a woman.
Right. And especially with how passionately I feel things. Right. I take things very seriously. And in my teenage years, like, purity was my everything. Like, I focused very hard on maintaining my purity and, you know, being a good, godly woman so that I would have something honorable to offer my husband. Like, that was my goal in life. I needed to be the best wife and best mother I could possibly be, because as a woman, that was my purpose. I did not have a purpose outside of that.
Yeah.
Like, I was planning on going to nursing school, but that was just kind of a backup plan. Yeah, that was like, well, my first goal is to be a mother, but if I need to, I can be a nurse too.
Yeah.
So it really just skewed everything in my whole life. And I'm still not a nurse.
Not for that reason anymore.
Nah.
But, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's arguable, though. Like, I think that a lot of the issues that I had with religion and shame and guilt and stuff contributed to my depression, anxiety, which contributed to me dropping out of school in my final semester of nursing school. So who knows? It could all be connected. I'm just going to blame everything on Christianity. Because most things really are. It seems like most things really are due to religious ideologies that I held. Those are the things that really messed up my head.
So as we were watching Stranger Things recently, the second season, something kind of reminded me of kind of like my experience and how I was brought up when the boy and girl were kind of like, they're starting to get a little bit flirty, and they have to like sleep in separate beds. That whole kind of feel and culture, like when I was hanging out with a girl, or if when I was in high school, I went on vacation with my girlfriend at the time, and her brother and girlfriend were there too. And for some reason, they were allowed to sleep in the same bed. Really? But then, like, with us, it was like, all right, you guys need to sleep in separate beds.
Were they older or something?
No.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah. So it was always like, all right, sleep in separate beds, you know, make sure you're not getting too cuddly and cozy, and make sure you're home by this, you know, time. The whole, you know, supervision kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that was,
which, I mean, can be a good thing. That can be a good thing for like real young teens who are dating and stuff, because like teenagers will do stupid things and they won't use protection, especially if they haven't been taught about protection or how important it is and stuff. So, I mean, I can understand it to a degree, and we probably will supervise our kids and stuff. But when it comes to like 18, 19-year-old,
which
like young adults,
which I was.
Oh, at that point you were?
It was, I think I was 18 by that point.
Okay. Yeah. So like, the same thing with me. Like when I would spend the night at my boyfriend's house, like we were 18, I think. And like we had to sleep in separate beds and stuff, like in separate rooms. Yeah. I would just sneak out in the middle of the night and join him in his bed, and we would fuck.
So that worked.
Yeah, obviously.
I just thought it was weird too that her brother, they didn't really care much like what they were doing, but for us,
that's so like, weird. I wonder why.
Yeah.
Like maybe they were just the bad kids and they knew that you guys were like the good kids who actually wanted to like maintain your purity or something.
I think that's what it was.
Oh my God. It's so weird.
Yeah.
So anyway, like with us, we actually went through pre-marriage counseling that dealt with all kinds of stuff related to beginning a marriage and communication, you know, dealing with financial stuff, like just things that would impact our marriage, which a lot of it was, I think, helpful, like talking about communication skills and things like that. Well, the very last chapter in the book is about sex, and they save it for last.
Is it the last chapter, or did we just save it for last?
No, it's the last chapter in the book because they don't want you thinking about sex too early on.
Because you don't excited.
You don't think about sex unless people talk about it. Don't you know that?
Right.
Which I think is just hilarious. Like, really? Do they really think that we're not going to think about sex unless someone's talking about it? Like, that's the whole thing with, like, abstinence only. They don't want to teach kids about how to protect themselves and how to use condoms and stuff because
then they're going to want it.
Yeah, because if you know how to have sex, then you're going to want to have sex.
But the problem is they already want it.
Yeah.
But without the education, then they don't know what to do. Yeah. And they don't know how to be safe.
Like what? Teenagers aren't going to want to have sex just because you haven't talked to them about it. Yeah. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So our very last chapter of this book that we were reading for pre-marriage counseling.
It's called Preparing for Marriage.
Yeah, that's what the book is called. was about sex, and we were reading through it a little bit before we turned on the mics, and oh my gosh, some of this stuff. We're going to read some of it to you. All right, so this one part of the book says, sex has become a cultural obsession, but the picture of sex our culture paints is a cheap counterfeit and a perversion of God's original design. Like a surgeon's knife that has been designed for good, but can be used to harm if put in the wrong hands. Sex has been twisted and torn from its original purposes with devastating consequences. In this session, you will catch a glimpse of the incredible power and privilege that God has given us in sexual intimacy. You'll uncover some possible misconceptions and replace them with God's perspective from the scriptures. Blah, blah, blah. So then it asks some questions and you're supposed to talk about it.
The thing that stood out to me when you were reading that was the part about the devastating consequences.
Yeah.
Which it's only a devastating consequence under this mentality of religion.
Well, yeah, it's only devastating consequences if, one, you weren't educated properly about sex and how to have safe sex and consensual sex, and so therefore you ended up either pregnant, raped, or with an STD. Or another possible terrible consequence would be the guilt and shame that's only there because religion teaches you that you should feel guilty and shameful for having sex.
That drives you to suicide.
Mm-hmm. In some cases. I mean, not everyone is suicidal, but...
Right, but in your case...
But in my case, yeah. Yeah, and I thought it was interesting that it says sex has become a cultural obsession. Has become, really? Sex hasn't always been an obsession among human beings whose biology demands that they reproduce. No, sex has just always been a thing.
I think it's more of an obsession now because of technology and advertisements and stuff like that and movies.
I don't think it's more of an obsession. It's just
it's just perceived because it's more prevalent to our eyes. We see it more often. Yeah,
perhaps. Okay, so this part says, the unfortunate fact is that most of us have received a poor sex education. Our knowledge, our viewpoints, and our experiences are twisted by our culture. We learn about sex from man's perspective. In order to build a good sexual relationship when you are married, you need to learn what the Creator had in mind. I totes agree. We have terrible sex education.
It hurts. It's so ironic. It hurts.
We learn about sex from man's perspective. Who else is gonna tell us?
Right.
The Bible really says very little about sex. I mean, nothing as far as teaching us what's okay, what's not, when and how and where and all that stuff.
Well,
so basically it's just men's interpretations of what the Bible says about sex. So yeah, we're getting man's perspective on sex even from Christianity.
I mean, anything other than missionary is sodomy.
True story. Although, no, doggy style is not sodomy, according to them. But in some Christian sects and denominations, yeah.
Yeah. But there's the whole, sexual immorality thing and...
Mm-hmm. Oh, you can't do kinky stuff. That's just demonic. That's
It just reminds me of the one clip.
Perverted.
It's demonic.
It's demonic. Let's see what else is good in here.
Speaking of, the Bible doesn't actually say anything about masturbation explicitly. The whole idea comes from...
What, Onan?
Yeah. It's
because...
Genesis 38, 8 through 10, where there was this, I don't know if you call it a law or an understood rule that...
I think it was a biblical law.
Yeah. if a man dies and he has a wife and they don't have a child yet, it's his brother's duty to impregnate the woman. Yeah. So this guy, Onan...
basically Genesis, rape her. Yeah.
Yeah, so this guy in Genesis, Onan, has sex with his brother's wife. He doesn't feel good about it, so he pulls out, and yeah, that was bad. And he died. So that's the only thing.
Well, God killed him because he pulled out and spilled his seed on the ground instead of doing what God told him to do, which was impregnate this woman.
Right. So that's the only thing closest related to masturbation,
which was not masturbation. It was sex, which is, I don't understand. Oh, my brain hurts. Okay, so you guys need to listen to this verse. I had completely forgot about this verse, but I read it tonight and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is where this messed up mindset comes from. All right. It says, but because of immoralities, let each man have his own wife, and let each woman have her own husband. Let the husband fulfill his duty to his wife, and likewise also his wife to her husband. Wait, what? And likewise also the wife to her husband. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. And likewise also the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. Stop depriving one another, except by agreement for a time, that you may devote yourselves to prayer, and come together again, lest Satan tempt you because of your lack of self-control. Oh my God. The wife does not have authority over her own body, nor does the husband. Yeah, that's great.
So we all own each other.
Yes. You and I. We own each other's bodies.
Consensual slavery. That's what it sounds like.
Okay, and the thing was, when we read this book together, when we did pre-marriage counseling, we were like, yup. Yep.
Makes sense.
I own you, you own me. That's what this whole marriage covenant means to us. Like, you are giving yourself to me. Mind, body, soul. And now, like, looking back and like having an outside perspective and looking at it objectively, we're realizing like that is crazy.
Yeah.
We can't own each other.
I mean, that goes back to like when you're a child. Mm-hmm. Like you are saving yourself for someone in the future, 20 years down the road ish, that you don't own your body. Your future husband or wife owns your body, and whatever you do up until that point.
Yeah. And if you do anything before you meet that future husband or wife, you are betraying them. You're betraying them before you've even met them.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
You are your own person.
Yeah. Like, I do not own you, Patrick. Your body is yours. What you consent to is your choice. Mm-hmm. And same for me. And like, it's really sad that that was a revelation to me, you know? I wasn't taught that my body was my own. Yeah. I was taught that I belonged to my dad and then to my future husband and to God, of course. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't mine. It was never mine until I became an atheist and stepped back and reanalyzed everything. And I'm like, oh my God, I own me. I get to do what I want with me. Like, why is this something that I'm just now realizing as a 27, 28-year-old woman? Like, I'm 30 now, but when I realized it, I was like 27, 28. That's messed up. Why did I not realize that I owned myself? Oh, my kids are going to know that they own themselves.
Mm-hmm. And not other people.
Yes, and that they are entitled to other people's bodies. They have ownership of their own, and everyone else has ownership of their own bodies, and you can only have their body if they consent to it enthusiastically.
Mm-hmm.
But that was so crazy. When I read this, I was like, oh my gosh, I read this when we were going through premarriage counseling and agreed.
And it was okay.
Yeah. And now I read it and I'm just like, holy crap, what was I thinking? So yeah, no, we don't own anyone else's bodies but our own. I don't even own my children's bodies. I don't believe in doing anything that they do not consent to, like as far as like hugging and kissing and stuff. Like I'll play around with them and I'll like give a smooch on the cheek or something like that. But if they are like legit saying, no, don't kiss me, stop, I'm not touching them, because I'm teaching them right now that they have a voice over who touches their body. And when they say no, that person better not freaking touch them.
And that there are boundaries.
Yes. And that there are boundaries that need to be respected, and that they don't owe anybody physical intimacy. So we're actually going to make this a two-parter because there's more that we want to say about this. And we also got some comments on Facebook from our listeners who had things to say about ways that religion impacted them in negative ways.
Yeah, and we definitely want to touch on those.
Yeah.
To get other people's perspectives on it.
Yeah, which I had a feeling that this was going to be a two-parter because, I mean, it's such a loaded topic. There's so much to say.
Yeah.
Even in sharing my story, I left out so much stuff. So it's like,
right,
we kind of have to just split this up. So there will be a second sex episode. If you have something that you want to add to the conversation, please feel free to reach out to us. You can email us at reallifebeyondfaith@gmail.com. You can reach out to us on Facebook. We're facebook.com/reallifebeyondfaith. I'm Jenica Crail. If you look up JENICACRAIL, you can find me.
Or me, Patrick Crail.
Yeah, and then we're also on Twitter at RLBF and then I am at Jenica Crail. So there's plenty of ways for you to get a hold of us. Share your story, give us some feedback.
Yeah, and if you have a more personal story that you don't want out publicly, you can feel free to email us or send us a private message, and we will be sensitive to the fact that you don't want your name out there.
Right. Yeah, everything is anonymous.
Right.
Unless you specify otherwise. So.
Right. Yeah, we're conscious about that. It's sensitive.
Yeah. So this week we would like to thank our patrons as usual. We love our patrons and appreciate that. So thank you guys so much for being patrons. We've had a few more patrons lately, and God, it still just amazes me every time we get a new patron. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
I don't feel like we deserve this. Thank you so much.
Yeah, seriously.
Like, it always surprises me. But guys, seriously, like, we really appreciate the support and the help with the financial aspects that go along with this. A couple of our top patrons have plugs that we share at the end of every episode. If you would like to plug something at the end of an episode, you can become a $5 or $10 patron. Just go on over to patreon.com/reallifebeyondfaith. You can become a patron as low as $1 per episode, and you get behind the scenes video content, and you get to have a say in some of the things that we do whenever we have like polls or anything like that to get listener feedback, which we haven't yet, but we do plan on doing that. Mm-hmm. Then you will get your say, and your say will be prioritized. So if you want to be a patron and if you want to support what we're doing here, go on over and do that. Rich is one of our top patrons and a very good friend of ours, and he wants to plug Recovering from Religion. You can find them at recoveringfromreligion.org, and they help people who are doubting, questioning, or leaving religion and need support in doing so. And then there's Thomas Smith from Serious Inquiries Only, also a great friend, awesome person. And his podcast is a critical thinking look at science, religion, and politics. And he has on some great guests. He covers some interesting topics and is fantastic at research. So check out his podcast.
So thank you, Thomas and Rich and all the other patrons. You guys are awesome.
Yes, you guys rock our socks off. Oh, and Chris, who is our newest patron, wants to plug the Tri-State Freethinkers, which is our local group who we are actually involved with. And
yeah, they're a pretty big group down here.
Yeah, they're a huge group and very active, and they do fantastic work. They do activism, community stuff, they do social events, and they do education. So they cover like the broad spectrum of stuff.
Yeah. And there's so many different events and like community service things.
Yeah.
That they do.
So if you live in the Cincinnati tri-state area and you want to get plugged in somewhere, that's the place to do it, because they really do cover the broad spectrum of things that, you know, people are interested in. So that'll wrap it up for this week. I hope you guys have an awesome week, and we'll catch you next time. But in the meantime,
keep it real. Check.
Rock and roll.
Bitches.
Rock with your cock out. Wait, rock out with your cock out.
What'd you say?
I said rock with your cock out. This is going to be interesting. I think we've waited till too late at night.
Yeah, too many bottles deep.
By too many, you mean one?
Yeah. One is too many.
I mean, if you think about it, our dinner was a cheese ball.
You're a cheese ball?
Did you eat me for dinner? Should have.